all about what's happening in the UK. Tommy, welcome to the program. Tommy, I've been following you for years. For whatever reason, the oligarchs of Western society tell me I'm supposed to hate you, but I followed you for years. I think you do great work. Introduce yourself to our American audience.
My name's Tommy Robinson. I'm a journalist and author from the UK. I tell the stories that the government don't want you to see, the problems from mass immigration with open borders. I'm from a town 30 miles north of London. When I was born, there was one mosque. There's now 45. I've seen the attack on freedom. I've seen the cultural change. Right now in Great Britain, we are fighting for our survival. Our country has changed beyond recognition. Our culture is disappearing. I currently am sat here facing a total attack by my government, my media and politicians, full of absolute lies. I faced 2 years in prison for creating a film. Now, the problem they have with me, Charlie, is they don't know how to deal with me in the sense of I was censored for 5 years. So their solution to the problems we bring about, when I say the problems, an entire generation of British daughters were raped at the hands of Muslim gangs. It was something that the UK calls grooming. They give it a pretty name. I think in India they call it love jihad. In Holland they call it lover boys. What that is groups of predominantly Pakistani Muslim men torturing, raping and murdering young English girls. The figures on this are unbelievable. 90% of the convictions for this sort of crime in the UK are by Muslim men. 30% of the men convicted are called Mohammed. Why? Muslim men only make up 2.5% of the UK. Why are they responsible for 90% of these convictions? You're not even allowed to ask that question. In fact, the fact that these gangs were operating in every single town and city across our country was hidden for 30 years. Again, not my opinion. We brought this to the forefront on the streets when I formed an organisation called the English Defence League. Thousands and thousands of English men took to the streets furious about what was being allowed to happen. Then they started making arrests. They started trying to deal with the problem, but they're not dealing with it properly. And the figures would terrify you, and I'll give them. I've made a 5-part series called The Rape of Britain in a town called Telford. Telford has a 1.7% Muslim population. The police identified 1,000 victims in this small town. 5 of them are dead. 5 of them were murdered, burned alive and killed. 5 of them. Out of that, so in that one small town, the police identified 200 perpetrators. Only 11 were prosecuted, but the police investigation identified 200. There's only 3,500 Muslims in Telford. So out of the 3,500 Muslims, by the time you get rid of the women and the under-16s and the elders, you've got 1,000 Muslim men. 20% of them were raping and torturing young girls in that town. That's how big the problem is. And the problem is you're not allowed to have this discussion and talk about it. So what you're seeing now in the UK, where things are burning, where people are out in the streets, it is a build-up of 10, 20 years of being silenced, being labelled as racist, labelled as far right, made to shut up, scared into silence while your daughter's freedom, your wife's freedom, your mother's freedom to just walk down the street freely has been taken away. The figures are unbelievable across the country, the hostility. And of course, I'm not saying everyone that comes into the country is a problem. In fact, my problem is Islamic immigration because I see the culture so different because I've grown up around it. That doesn't mean, again, every Muslim's bad. Some of the best people I've met in my hometown of Luton have been Muslim. Some of the people I love are Muslim. Okay? But I separate the people from the idea and the ideology. The ideology brings about oppression, brings about violence, brings about subjugation of non-Muslims, and we have to have the discussion about it, which is what they're trying to silence, which is why they despise me having an account on X that is reaching hundreds of millions of people.
I mean, everything you just said, I have no disagreement. In fact, I have total agreement with. And the only difference between what I do and what you do is in my country, my government can't put me in jail for making a movie. I mean, they can put me in jail for other stuff, but we still have robust speech protections as it stands right now. The current regime wants to change that. I think that's a very important element as to why the UK has allowed this mass migration to happen without any sort of there's been some opposition. There's opposition now, but not serious opposition because of the lack of ability of robust speech protections. Can you tell our audience about the lack of what we would call First Amendment in our country versus in the UK? I'm allowed to say stuff in America that you literally are not allowed to say. You could go to jail.
Charlie, the head of prosecutions has just come out today and said they will prosecute and convict people who share footage of the riots. If the footage they share may incite racial hatred, so if it's footage that may, you will be arrested. They have just arrested more people today for sharing misinformation. for sharing misinformation, sharing something that might have been wrong. They're being arrested. When it comes to freedom of speech, they're coming for your freedom of speech because they can't get to where they want without taking speech. They've took ours. Don't think we live in a society. We live in a post-free speech era in Europe. There is no freedom of speech. In fact, I believe the only place in the world that still has it is the United States of America because of your constitution. It's the only place. We do not have it. And in fact, do you really have it? Because when big tech totally control other than...
No, of course. No, you're right. Of course you're right. I'm just saying at least we don't have the government's colluding in the background. It's just it's a separation that's a little bit different, but not a lot. So I want to get to this because I think it's very important. Where you talk about the mass Mohammedan invasion of the United Kingdom and the lack of rebellion against that or response against that. Help me understand why that happened, because it's so obviously self-destructive. It's self-evidently suicidal. What went wrong as to why the body politic, the middle class of your once beautiful country allowed this worldview to capture this once great nation?
It didn't affect the middle class until now. So the middle class didn't care. It affects us, the working class. And the UK is a very classist country where people who talk like me, who are from education like me, from a poverty background or a town like me, we're supposed to just shut up. And it's our towns and our communities were affected where all these migrants were brought in. And they were brought in originally by the Labour Party or Democrat Party to rub the right's nose in it. And basically to replace the working class with loyal voters, because the working class decided to vote Conservative. It's like your Democrats going to Republicans as they become more, as they wanted better and become more successful. So they basically have replaced us with a Muslim community. And again, I'll just talk about my hometown of Luton. What the Labour Council do, your Democrats, they do a deal with the leader of the Council of Mosques. So if they've got 45 mosques, they have one person who brings all those mosques together. They then sit down, and that is a vote bank of 50,000 votes. That is enough to win the election. And what we've just seen, our entire last election was about Gaza. Wasn't about the English girls being raped. Wasn't about all the British pensioners in poverty who can't afford heating. Wasn't about any of these things. A 6% Muslim population dictated the entire nation's political debate because they're so congregated in close-knit communities. So get ready for this, United States of America. Because your borders were open for years to Mexicans, it's Hispanic immigration. Since Joe Biden, last 4 years, you've had Pakistani, Somali, Syrian, Iraqi. You have no idea what's coming, right? With the cultural change, the hostility, the rapes, you need to get really prepared because it happens so quick, so fast. And what you won't be able to understand, which is what I've watched, is the way the councils succumb to them, the way the council just give in, the way the police, and as two-tier policing has become part of our language now across the UK, everyone now knows about it. I've been speaking about that for 20 years in my activism, but no one wanted to listen. All the problems I spoke about, no one wanted to listen because they weren't affecting them. But since October 7th, since social media especially, people can now see themselves. So whereas the media, as I said, I was censored totally, deleted. If you search my name on TikTok now, not one single video comes up. If you write my name on Facebook, you get banned. If you write it on Instagram, it gets deleted. That is total control over the narrative so that anyone who counters the government's narrative is silenced. X has really thrown a spanner in the works for them. The latest film I've just made, Charlie, called Silence, it is far bigger than me, so I advise every American to watch it. It is exactly what they've done to Donald Trump. It's what's happened to Steve Bannon. It's the £1 million fine to Alex Jones. It's going on around across Europe. Anyone who gets in the way of the narrative, whether it be United Nations, World Economic Forum, any of these issues, is attacked.
Anyone over the age of 40 can reverse type 2 with this recipe using apple cider vinegar. Grab a pen.
With the court system, is the politicization and the weaponization of the judiciary. I made a documentary, Charlie, where 3 years ago I was given a gagging order. Everything in the documentary is factual. They don't argue with that. They're not arguing that it's not true, but they don't want the public to see it because it has the power. And they said it wasn't in the public's interest. In 8 days, 39 million people have watched that documentary. That is why currently now I am facing attack from absolutely everywhere. I've got people politicians sitting on news channels every morning for the last 3 or 4 days. I have been the topic of conversation on every TV channel in my country, spouting absolute lies about me. Lies because I've made a documentary which totally humiliates the judiciary. Now, what they've done, they give me a gagging order, and I failed myself as a journalist, I failed myself as an Englishman, because I allowed them to gag me, because I was scared. Because I was told I'll get 2 years in prison if I show anyone the evidence. Now, for 3 years, that ate me up inside. I failed. And on the 27th of July, Great Britain was on the verge of a cultural revolution. Now, the world was watching us. On the 1st of June, 1 million people watched us live on X and 30,000 people joined us on the streets. By the 27th of July, 100,000 people joined us in a total peaceful celebration of British identity. And to send a message to the establishment, it's David versus Goliath, and David's ready to fight back. Not fight physically, but we've had enough. You are not doing this anymore. We're not being silenced. We are not shutting up. We're not backing down from this. It's our country. There's 1,000 years of English history here. You're not giving it away in 67 years.
Yes, and it's also the tradition that built the West. America is not America without England, period. America is a transference of the best of England. And yes, we had a revolution, but in some ways we're still sister countries, and we brought English common law and separation of powers and this idea of natural rights. We didn't just come out of that ex nihilo. It is an inheritance that we derived from your country, from the Magna Carta to the Declaration to the Constitution. Tommy, I want you to hold that thought really quick, but you're always welcome here. I want you to know that. And there is a response happening in the United States against the censorship. We have Rumble, we have Real America's Voice, of people that really want to get this message out. And I hope everyone understands Tommy is warning you about mass migration. It will destroy the West. It's destroying the West. And Europe is a husk of its former self because of it. And it's coming for America in real time.